Hello there, welcome. I am John Ebini Ode from Red Hound Consulting, and today I am going to teach you bind shell and reverse shell. Now we're going to look at the definition of a bind shell and a reverse shell. Now, as an IT personnel or an ethical hacker or a penetration tester, you are going to be making use of either a bind shell or a reverse shell in most of your daily tasks. So let's go to the definition of a bind shell and a reverse shell. Now, in a bind shell, the target starts a command shell and listens on a local port, allowing the attacker to connect to the target on the listening port. While for the reverse shell, in a reverse shell, which is the opposite of a bind shell, the attacker starts a command shell and listens on a local port, allowing the target to connect to the attacker's machine on the listening port. So now here we have the definition of a bind shell and a reverse shell. Now, for a bind shell, the target is being instructed to start the command shell and listen on a local port, allowing the attacker to connect to the target on the listening port. However, the bind shell is not suitable for remote exploitation because the target is probably behind a firewall. So whenever your target machine is sitting behind a firewall, it's not that possible to make use of the bind shell. In this case, you make use of the reverse shell. Now, what is a reverse shell? In a reverse shell, the attacker starts a command shell and listens on a local port, allowing the target to connect to the attacker's machine on the listening port. Now, a reverse shell is useful in cases where the attacker has no means of access into a target network due to the presence of a firewall in the target network, which can stop the attacker from connecting successfully to the target machine or computer. So whenever your target machine is sitting behind a firewall, you are always free to make use of the reverse shell, because in this case the attacker is the one starting the command shell and listening on a local port, while the target machine is the one connecting to the attacker's machine on the listening port. This is possible because since most outbound rules, that is outbound firewall rules, are more on premises, a reverse shell is more likely to bypass the firewall. Okay, we have this image here for the bind shell. Over here we have the attacker's machine, and here we have the target machine. Now, if you vividly recall the definition of the bind shell, which we have here, it says the target starts a command shell and listens on a local port, allowing the attacker to connect to the target on the listening port. So over here you can see that the target machine is listening on port 4444, while the attacker's machine is connecting to this target machine via this port 444. Now let's take a look at the reverse shell. Now, for a reverse shell, just like the definition I gave, the attacker's machine starts a listener. It starts a listener instructing this target machine to connect back to that listener, and that listener, let's say the listener is listening on port 444, and here the target machine is connecting to this attacker's port 444. So now this is how the reverse shell and the bind shell works. So now let's go into the implementation. Alright, now that we are here, we are going to perform a bind shell first. So for that, I'll be making use of the Kali Linux and the Metasploitable 2 virtual machine. Now, the Kali Linux will serve as the attacker's machine, while the Metasploitable will serve as the target machine or the victim's machine. And also, I will be making use of a networking tool known as Netcat. Now, Netcat is included by default in many Unix-like operating systems, and it can also be installed on others. Netcat is a valuable tool for system administrators, network engineers, and security professionals. It can also be used for file transfers, port scanning, and creating connections to host devices or computers over TCP/IP. Okay, so here I'm going to start up my Kali Linux terminal. Remember, the Kali Linux is the attacker's machine, it's going to connect to the target machine, which is Metasploitable 2. Alright, before we continue, since we are carrying out a bind shell, we need to retrieve the IP address of the target machine, in this case the Metasploitable 2 virtual machine, and we also need to set up a listener on the target machine. So to do that, I'm going to go to the target machine, which is the Metasploitable 2 virtual machine, and the first command I will give it is the ifconfig command to retrieve the IP address. So here we have it as 172.30.1.20. so the next thing I'm going to do is to set up a listener using netcat. Then I'm going to give it the -n option. This means we don't want to perform name resolution using DNS since we are making use of IP address. Then we have the L option to set up a listener. Then we have V for verbose, which is going to display more information as netcat is running. Then we have P for port, so we are making use of port 4444. Then we now have the -e option. This stands for execute, so this will execute any file you give it. So for that, we want it to execute the bash. We want it to execute the bash, which means whenever whenever the attacker's machine connects to this target machine, this target machine is going to offer the attacker's machine the bash shell that is going to render to the attacker's machine the bash shell. So for that, I'm going to hit enter. So you can see that the target machine is now listening on port 444. So let's head back to our attacker's machine, which is the Kali Linux machine. So for that, I'm going to use netcat, then -n, since we are not performing name resolution using DNS, then V. So for that, I'm going to 172.30.1.20, so port 444. Okay, so this is going to connect to the target machine on port 444 because this is the IP address of the Metasploitable 2 virtual machine. So I'm going to hit enter. So when you hit enter, if you go back to the target machine here, you see that a connection has been established. See it here, unknown 172.30.1.23. This is my Kali Linux or the attacker's machine IP address. So let's go back to the Kali Linux. So when we are back here, you can use the ls command to display the content of the directory, that is the current directory you are in right now on the target machine. So we have vulnerable here, we have pwd.txt. Let's use ls-il. Okay, you can see that this is a file while this is a directory. Now let's see the content of the pwd.txt file. Let's see if we can find anything interesting there. Oh, this is the user's password. My password 1234 abcd quality bracket underscore ampersand. Okay, this might be this might be the password for the user's online account or for his operating system. Okay, so now let's now you can see that the interface given to you is not all that beautiful. So to give yourself a Linux interface, let's make use of Python. So I'm going to use this command port pty. So let's spawn a shell. So we're going to make use of the bash shell. Okay, so we've given ourselves a beautiful Linux this terminal here. So we have msfadmin as Metasploitable. So now you can carry on your tasks. You can seed into vulnerable since there's a directory. ls see the content of this directory. Okay, so this is how to carry out a bind shell. So the next thing we're going to do is to carry out a reverse shell. Alright, to carry out a reverse shell, the attacker's machine will start up a listener using a specific port. Then the target machine will connect to the attacker's machine via that port. So now imagine that your target machine, which in this case is our Metasploitable 2 virtual machine, is sitting behind a firewall. In this case, you can't use a bind shell to establish a connection successfully to that target machine. So now the best thing to do is to make use of a reverse shell. So like I said, in this reverse shell, the target machine will be the one to establish a connection to the attacker's machine. So in this case, to carry this out, we are going to set up a listener on the target on the attacker's machine, which is a Kali Linux. So for that, we're going to use this. Okay, let's use port 4444. Okay, sorry, let's set up the listener. So 444. So now the attacker's machine, which is a Kali Linux, is listening on port 444. So we're going to go back to the target machine, which in this case is the Metasploitable 2 virtual machine. So we're going to create a connection right now. We're going to establish a connection from the target machine back to the attacker's machine. So we're going to make use of netcat again, nv 172.30.1.23, which is the IP address of the Kali Linux or the attacker's machine on port 444. Then we are going to make use of the -e option. Now this -e we execute the bash shell. That means when the connection is established successfully to the attacker's machine, the Metasploitable will offer, or netcat will give the shell of the Metasploitable to Kali Linux to carry out any action or command it wants to carry out. Okay, so we have the -e bin bash here. Please, one thing of note is this: if you are using a Windows operating system, here you can supply cmd.exe, okay, for the command prompt. So we are going to make use of bash since we are using Linux. So 444 open. Right now, let's go back to our Kali Linux and see what we have. Okay, now you see that the connection from 172.30.1.20, which is the Metasploitable 2 virtual machine, was successful. Let's see. So same thing as before. So you can always give yourself a nice interface, pty.spawn bin bash. Okay, enter. So we have it here. You can do anything you want to do. ID clear. Okay, so that comes to the end of this tutorial. So I believe you've learned how to carry out a bind shell and a reverse shell. So please, if you know this is your first time watching my videos, please do like, share and comment on my videos, and please don't forget to turn on the notification bell so that you don't get to miss any of my videos. So thank you for watching.